Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to episode 4 of this series where I am taking you on the recording process of a band's EP from beginning to end. And we are on the episode that I was kind of sort of dreading the most, and that is guitars. See, this whole EP process has been a little unorthodox, if I'm being honest. When we started planning the EP, the band and I had a couple of guidelines that we were going to follow, but we had a couple of key core understandings of each other. First off, this EP, well, if you're counting the fact that it has 6 songs, it could be an LP at this point. This record had to have a couple of guidelines set in stone and in agreement by me and the band. First and foremost, the band wanted a live feel. They always claimed to be a better live band than a traditional studio band. And if you ever saw their shows, you would know that, hey, these guys kick a lot of ass live. So I wanted to capture that live energy, which means traditionally you would have the drummer play to a metronome. But in this case, as you saw in episode 2 of this series, we had the guitar player and the bass player play along with the drums, and we captured the best performance of the drums for each song. I spliced in a couple of tom fills here and there from other takes, and I did some editing trickery, but for the most part, what you hear on the drums is the full take that the drummer recorded when they played live. But because we did not play to a metronome, that means recording the other instruments is going to be tricky. See, we had to get the bass player and the guitar player to now match the imperfect time of the drummer. I'm probably overcomplicating it, to which you're all probably commenting now, just play to a click. I get it. Normally, I do not record a band unless I know how to play to a click track. But because I've worked with these guys before and I've been friends with them for quite some time now, I'm making an exception. They wanted a live feel, so we're giving them a live feel, which means no metronome, which means all the timing imperfections that come with it, and all the complications of recording the other instruments to go with it as well. Second, we want absolutely no samples of any kind on the drum kit. Their last EP that you can listen to on Spotify had samples replacing the kick drum and the snare drum, and spoilers guys, the entire guitar sound of that EP was from an amp sim, specifically the Soldano SLO100 amp sim. We wanted none of that. But the Soldano amp sim sounds so good, we are probably going to use it for when we do solos later. But for the main rhythm tracks, we're going to be doing it the old-fashioned way, which is miking up a cab with a great amp, a great pedal board collection, and sticking with a sound. Which brings me to number 3. When I said to the band, I'm willing to do this for you guys, you know, the whole not playing to a click, turning the venue into a drum room, all that stuff. If we're going to do this, I need you guys to be on top of your tones. I need you guys to be on top of everything. And I need you guys to be prepared to come in and get the tone and be happy with it, more importantly. Because if we mic up the cab and you don't like the tone, we have to do it again. I know a lot of you may be thinking right now, why didn't I just record a DI track? And the reason is we didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where we would have the option to reamp. I know that sort of goes counterintuitive with what we're doing with recording a record, but I think for you aspiring engineers out there, or you aspiring guitarists out there that want to record your own tracks, I think the more you screw up with miking your cab and learning how your cab works, learning how your cab sounds, the better you'll be at engineering live guitar amps. And a lot of people right now either don't know how to do it properly or not good enough to where they could pass it off as a record. Now, I am by no means a guitar god or engineering god at this. If you put me and Glenn Fricker in the same room with the same guitar player, the same amps or whatever, and you just ask us to mic it, I am sure he will do a far better job than me because he has a lot more experience recording live instruments than I do. Basically what I'm saying is practice makes perfect, guys. Don't be afraid to mic up your guitar amp, stick with a tone, and make it work in your mix. If it sounds like shit, oh no, you have to play your instrument again. That's a very analog approach to making music, and I take the Dave Grohl approach when recording bands. I like to have the human element. If it's not quantized perfectly, I don't care. Is the song good? That's all that matters to me. Is it recorded well? That's all that matters to me. Is the band good to work with? Do they have good songs? Is the production value good? That's all that matters to me. But above all else with this record, the number one thing that the band and I agreed on is we want to capture as close to perfect as we can raw when we recorded without having to do much EQing or post-processing afterward. And fun fact, guys, the number one secret that makes great mixes separate from bad mixes is great raw recordings. Chris Lord-Alge, the guy who has pretty much mixed a lot of hard rock, metal, and punk rock records over the years, and he's a mixing and recording engineer that I aspire to achieve that level of greatness at. He was over at a conference a couple of months ago, or I think it was last year, and to show some presentation, he played the raw tracks of American Idiot from Green Day, a song that he recorded and mixed. And the raw tracks sounded so good, a lot of people in the audience were like, well, wait, are you sure this is the raw recording? That's what you want to chase. The great recordings and the less amount of work you have to do in post, the better your mix and your master is going to be. I know it's a very simple concept, but shit in, shit out. Great in, great out. That's how it works. You can't polish a turd to the point where you take a crappy recording and you make it great. Although sometimes a lot of people take crappy drum recordings and crappy DI guitars and turn them into passable records using amp sims and drum samples. We did not want to do that with this record. We wanted raw, in your face, how the band plays live, and we wanted all the imperfections that come with it. So when you listen to the final product, when this is all said and done, you are listening to the band at their absolute best, raw as they are as musicians. If you've been following this series from episode 1, you know the gear that we're using, you know what pedals we're using, and you know what microphones we're using. Episode 1 of the series, we went over the tones, we went over the mic placement, we went over everything. But just in case if you guys are lazy, let's cut to Spencer going over his gear right now. All right, people are asking what your guitars are. So what's this orange one?
This is a knockoff Les Paul that I kind of customized myself. It's a company, it's called Vintage by Wilkinson. It has two, it has two EMG pickups, 81, 85 Zakk Wylde setup. Yeah, it's really nothing spectacular. It's honestly a $500 make, and just add a little bit of a modern bite to it. You got a.
And what's the black Epiphone here?
The black Epiphone is another one that we did ourselves. This is the Jared James Nichols Old Glory custom. It's kind of a blend between a Les Paul Custom and a Les Paul Junior. It's got a Seymour Duncan Special Custom P90, dog ear P90 in it, which is like kind of like the Sabbath tone. Like that's what Tony Iommi used. This is a 2014 Les Paul Classic with a Seymour Duncan JB4 Jerry Cantrell model, Jeff Beck model, the 957 Classic 57 in the neck. Only has a master tone volume and 2 volume pots and 1 switch to add 15 dB boost here. And this one is got some tuning issues, but when it works, it really works. It's fantastic when it really works. Let's see.
And you guys are also commenting. You guys are also commenting on his pedal board too. So what's this last guy right here?
This is the Zakk Wylde Wild Audio Nomad. Nothing custom about this. This is just the strap locks and EMG 8185. Yeah, Zakk Wylde Nomad custom.
Now let's take a look at his board. So since a lot of you are commenting on that.
I hear my tone. All right, let's see what we got. We have Start Tuner, custom audio electronics by Bradshaw and Dunlop, Wah AC 104, I think it's the model. It's got the switchable pots, boost. It has a switchable boost. You got the graphic EQ by K-Line. That basically has knocked all of my overdrive pedals off the board completely. Just a little bit, tweaking the mids in the front end. It's always on. Univibe by Full Tone Rocktron, Deja Vibe, like a Robin Trower / Jimi Hendrix type of vibe to it. Then you got the Rocktron Banshee 2 talk box. This is the best talk box they ever came out with because you don't have to run a separate amplifier. This is basically a talk box within a guitar pedal setup, so it doesn't need its own amp, it doesn't need its own line.
Sounds fucking gnarly.
It's so cool. Next in the chain is an octave pedal. Use it to do octave up, kind of like Hendrixy fuzz type of no, not really fuzz, more kind of like a fuzz octave up sound. So when you play the leads, it gives you an overtone of octave, sort of like a ring modulator. This is always on too. This is the Delta Lab Stereo Chorus. I use this for just a little bit of like a layer on top of the distortion. It kind of breaks it up a little bit. Joyo Flanger. Music Lily Delay 8001. And at the very end, cranked all the way, noise suppressor.
There we go. Now you're coming in. Just got done 6 songs worth of rhythm tracks. Basically, we had the 57 and the MK. We had the same parts recorded twice. One's going to be panned left, one's going to be panned right. And before we pack up, let me show you guys how everything was mic'd up.
And we had to rearrange a little bit.
We had to rearrange. It was getting late, so the neighbors were not that happy, so I put this blanket on top of there, a couple more panels blocking the windows just to add a little more dampening in the room. But here is the setup. We have the thick panels here. We have we have 1, 2, and 3 in the back. So let's take off my expertly installed sound dampening, which is AKA just a couple blankets. Okay, so the way that we have everything set up guitar-wise, we had the 57 pointed at the bottom right speaker. That's a Celestion V30. And we had a Octava MK012 pointed directly at the center of the bottom left speaker, which is a Celestion Greenback. So this is how it was all mic'd up tonight. So as you can see, not a very expensive or extravagant guitar rig that you would see on YouTube. The EVH 5150 Mark III is a fantastic amp that I've worked with countless times over at the venue, and it sounds amazing. That PV Invictive cab that he uses sounds so good, and the speakers that are in it are perfect for rock and metal recordings. And he has a pretty solid guitar collection too. Like I said, the key ingredient to having a great mix and a great recording is having good raw tracks to begin with. And to get good raw tracks, You need good instruments and a good player. There's really no other way to make this happen. If you're going for raw recordings without having the assistance of amp sims or drum samples, you need to rely on the instrument, your engineering when you're miking up the instruments, and the musicians themselves when they're playing. This is a very simple approach. An SM57 on a vintage 30 is almost a foolproof way to achieve a high octane metal and hard rock sound. And that Octava microphone sounds so good everywhere I put it. It has a very nice, full, warm sound. Now, I did a live stream when we were recording the guitars, and if you missed it, well, all the more reason for you to subscribe and click that notification bell, because it will notify you when I go live, and it gives you a chance to watch the action as it happens. When it comes to doing live streams, I'm probably not going to save the live streams because it's just really me on my phone, and whatever audio you get from the stream, it's the microphone on my phone, so you really don't hear that much of a clarity. But there is a chance I might do some live mixing live streams where I will connect the camera to the computer. You will see the mirrored image in Logic, and you will hear the session audio as it is through my interface. Thumbs up if you're interested in that. We got 6 songs done, and he wants to do a whole lot of different layers of his tracks. So the session that we went over here is the foundation rhythm tracks. Old school approach, 2 microphones on a cabinet, and just an amp and a guitar player letting it rip. You can't really ask for a better situation than that. So guys, I think I've talked long enough, and you guys are probably sick and tired of looking at this stupid face. So let's switch over to Logic so you can hear some of the results that we got from the session. So this is a song called Shot Down. And this, I think if I were putting money on it, this is going to be their quote unquote single. We always joke around with whatever band I work with, like, what's your WDHA song on this record? And for those of you who don't live in the northern New Jersey area, WDHA is our rock station here. The WDHA song that I'm talking about is basically the single that you would get on every rock station in the country. And something tells me Shot Down is going to be that one. So the bass, so let's just refresh your memories here, guys. This is what we're working with. Let's go to a chorus. So already the bass is sounding really nice, fat in your face. I'm not going to have to do that much with the bass end, which, to be honest, that's the whole goal of this record, is for me not to do that much in post-processing. But we're here to talk about guitars, so let's talk guitars. So we have 2 different guitars that Spencer used. These 2 tracks right here are his Wilkinson Les Paul, aka the orange guitar that you saw in the gear breakdown, and this is his black Epiphone that we saw as well. So we have 2 different guitars with 2 different sets of pickups recording the same part. So that will add more width to the mix, and that will add more warmth, because while the Wilkinson guitar has a little bit more fuller and crunchier tone, the Epiphone has more of a high-end, really airy sound, so it's going to be really nice when they're paired together. He wanted to have a very open, airy, chorusy sound that Billy Duffy is known for, and the Cult is a huge inspiration for the sound of these guitars. Let's get to actually listening. This is the Wilkinson guitar with just the SM57. Here is that Wilkinson guitar with just the Octava condenser mic. Again, the 57 is pointed right between where, like, if the center of the cone's right here and the rest of the speaker is right here, the SM57 is pointed right at the sweet spot where the center, where the center point is, meets the rest of the cone. So it's pointed right there. And the MK012 Octava is pointed directly at the center of the speaker. The MK is pointed at a Celestion Creamback, and the 57 is mic'd up to a Celestion V30. So that's the Wilkinson guitar. Let's listen to the Epiphone guitar with just the 57. Again, I did not change the mic placement for any of these guitars, so the difference that you will hear is just the instrument. Here's the Epiphone with just the MK. So a pretty big difference here. So I'm gonna try to A/B this as quickly as possible, so you hear the Wilkinson 57 and the Epiphone 57 during the same point. So let's start with the Wilkinson, and I'll flip over to the Epiphone. Let's do the same thing with the MK. So it's a tiny subtle difference, but you can hear just a little bit more of a brighter tone coming from the Epiphone. So I record with two microphones when I mic a cab because I want a contrasting difference between the really high-end crunchy tone of the SM57 with the fullness that the Octava brings. So this is what it sounds like when they're together. And first things first, I had to align the two tracks, because if you're using two mics on the same source, you need to make sure they're aligned so you don't have phase cancellation. And to show you how much of a difference that is, I'm going to show you right now how much of a difference it is without phase correction on these two tracks versus with phase correction. So this is both tracks at the same time, both mics at the same time for the Wilkinson, and you're going to hear it sounds muddy, it sounds not present, and it just doesn't sound right. Okay, so it doesn't really sound there and present. It sounds almost passable. It doesn't sound right, and this is probably what a lot of you were hearing on the live stream when it was happening, because I didn't have phase alignment. I was going to just capture the performance. I didn't have everything phase corrected as we were tracking. But I have auto align on. I sent this to the MK to match the 57, and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but when I mic'd it up, it looked pretty much dead on. There's auto align is only moving the MK microphone track by 4 samples, which means I almost got it perfectly nailed when I was tracking it. So we heard what it sounded like without phase correction. Now let's hear what it sounds like with phase correction. Without. With. What a difference that makes. The way I'm going to mix this is I'm going to play with these two faders here to get the best tone I can out of this guitar, and then bust these two tracks together into one sum track, and that's what I'm going to treat when I actually mix and EQ. So we're going to do the same thing now, do the same experiment with the Epiphone. Here's the Epiphone without phase correction. Here it is with phase correction. So now I think what you really want to hear is, what do these sound like when they're playing at the same time? So here's what both guitars sound like playing at the same exact time. So you hear just the tiniest subtle difference, but you do hear a brighter tone coming from the Epiphone. If you're listening to this on headphones or good speakers, you hear it out of your right speaker right now, just a tiny, subtle, brighter tone coming from that Epiphone. So now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to just play around with this to see what it sounds good to me, completely raw, and then I'll bring in the rest of the mix in balance. Yeah, it sounds good to me. I prefer the fullness of the MK mic, and I like to bring that 57 just a little bit in, just a couple dB lower, because that 57 is really cranking it in the high frequency range from 2 to 6K. So again, I don't want to EQ the shit out of these tracks, so I want to do as little processing as possible. And the best way to EQ your guitars, if you're having two mics on the same source, is to just play with the faders like this to get the tone that you're looking for. Let's play the track, and I'll slowly bring in the guitars. Sounds pretty good. So let's listen to how Outlaw is going to sound. So you hear the chorus on his guitar tracks. You clearly hear it going on. And again, like I said earlier, I said to Spencer, I'm like, look, dude, if I would rather add the chorus in post, but if this is the sound that you like, we'll go with it. It's just, if you don't like it in the end, you're going to have to redo the whole thing all over again. Because we wanted that type of approach to doing these songs. And he was fine with it. And he actually listened to this. And I'm fortunate enough to have a separate room over there, aka my bedroom, where I can close the doors and surround the cab with some panels and thick blankets to isolate it in there, so that we can listen to the sound coming just from the speakers in here without hearing the cab itself. So I'm fortunate enough to have that. You may not have that, so you may have to do some trial and error with just recording, playing, listening back, adjusting, and go from there until you get the sound you want if you're going to mic your own amps. Like I said, he was very heavily influenced by Billy Duffy of The Cult, and he wanted a very cult-like sound for his guitars. Wait, that came out wrong. He wanted his guitar amps to have a very similar sounding vibe and tone to The Cult. There, I said that a little bit better. This song's called In the Ruins, and this is more of a very, I would like to say it's very like 80s glam metal. type of vibe that we're going here. So in the very beginning here, he has a part. I'll just play his scratch track. So I'll play his scratch track along with everything else. So you get a feel for how it's supposed to sound arrangement-wise. Okay, so that's his scratch check that him and Frank played together at when Jimmy recorded the drums. So let's mute that. So that first, those first notes where he's going da da da, he's gonna have some delays, some choruses, and a whole bunch of fun stuff on that because that's gonna be part of the lead. He was just playing that to cue in the drummer. So these are his 4 rhythm tracks right here, and he's going to have lead parts on top of that, along with other lead-ish rhythm fills. So we're going to have multiple layers of guitars when this is all said and done. But let's listen to the song as it is with his rhythm tracks. Again, as they are. Here he's going to have a solo. That is basically it, guys. That's a general summary of what we did as far as recording rhythm guitars for this upcoming record. Thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in me doing more live streams, let me know in the comment section below, right below that like button, and be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. It will really help me out, and it will also help you guys out when I post a notification that I'm about to go live. So stick around, episode 5 coming real soon. But in the meantime, I have 4 shows in a row at the venue that I'm going to do. So you're going to have, I think, 4 POV vlogs in a row. So look forward to those. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.